All right, so solving simple equations. Let's talk about who the fastest runner is of all time. Who is the fastest runner that there is? Anybody know? Raise your hand if you know. The fastest runner. Tyler. Usain Bolt, the fastest runner. Okay. How do we spell that? U-S. Thank you. Okay. Now, Usain Bolt, okay, he's pretty fast. If you want to, if you're watching the video, for example, you could pause the video and take a look at his 2012 Olympic race. So just take a second and check that out. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that video. And Usain Bolt he ran in 2012, okay? He ran the 100-meter dash he ran it in 9.63 seconds, okay? So there might be an equation you remember from science class. What is an equation that we talk about with distance in science class? Anybody? Distance equals? Yeah, dirt. Distance equals rate times time, okay? Well, if we were to look at this, what of this is distance? What of those numbers is distance? Yes? 100 meters. So this is your distance, okay? Equals rate times time. Well, what is your rate? I mean, do we know the rate or do we know the time? We know the time. So we know the time is here. This is the time. So this is that. So let's go ahead and plug in what we do know. We know that Usain Bolt went 100 meters, okay, well, we don't know the rate, so we'll leave that as, do you want to leave it as r or do you want to leave it as x? It's your choice. You want to leave it as r? Is that okay? So we're going to go ahead and fill in that he went 9.63 was his speed, and we don't know what the rate was, but we want to find out what the rate was. So how will we find out what the rate is that Usain Bolt went? How will we find out how fast he went? Thoughts? How do we solve that equation? Somebody? It's okay, jump in. You're making the video longer. How do we get this, the x, the whatever, the r alone? Yes, Tyler?
Distance times time.
Don't overdo it. How do we get rid of the 9.63?
Well, you subtract it.
Divide it. Divide it because it's multiplied right now. If we divide by 9.63 seconds, right, we will get how many meters per second he went. So 100 divided by 9.63 is how fast he went. He went 10.38 meters per second. Okay? 10.38 meters per second. That's close to 10.38 yards per second, because yards and meters are close. That's how fast Usain Bolt was going. So if you're thinking about 10 meters, that's 30 feet-ish or so. So 3, 6, I'm counting the tiles here, 9, 10, 5, and then another 10, and then another 5. He went the entire distance of this room in 1 second. That's how fast he was going. That's the rate. He went from the smartboard all the way back to the calculators per second 10 times. He did that over. And that's why it took him about 9.63 seconds to do it. Does that make sense? This is solving a simple equation. So I want to talk about some really important things what we're doing here. We're doing some really important things. So why don't we call this, I like to call this Mr. Pasceri's golden rules. Okay? What's the golden rule? Who can say that? I think we might be at lunch. Hold on. Let's pause the video. Okay, so totally forgot what I was talking about, but there are some golden rules of mathematics that we need to kind of understand as, we'll call them my golden rules. So what I'm saying is, like, let's just kind of talk about this for a minute. There's a couple things that you need to understand about math. I mean, the first thing is that if you take 2 and then you add negative 2, what happens? What happens when you take 2 and you add negative 2? It's 0. Or maybe, for example, if you took negative 7 and you added 7, what does that come out to? You take negative 7, you add 7. Shout it out if you know it. Perfect. So instead of writing this, I'm just going to write n for number. Number plus the negative version of that same number is going to equal what? Number plus the same of that number but negative is going to equal what? Go ahead. 0. Yeah, this is a golden rule. This is important, right? It's called the additive inverse, but we don't need to know the fancy names. We just need to understand that in general. This is golden rules, by the way. We have more than one rule to deal with. So let's talk about the next one. Well, I mean, let's say you have 8 divided by 8. What is that going to equal? Or if you have negative 3 divided by negative 3, or if you had 7 divided by, or even actually, let's make it 2.7 divided by 2.7. Okay? Let's go crazy here. What are the answers to these problems? What is the answer to the first one? 8 divided by 8. If you know it, just say it. 1. Perfect. So that's 1. What is the answer to negative 3 divided by negative 3? 1. What is the answer to 2.7 divided by 2.7? 1. What's the conclusion? What can we make this into a golden rule? How can we make it into a golden rule? Yes?
One number divided by the same number as 1.
Cool. So I will just put, instead of n, because I already put n, I'll go to the next letter in the alphabet, which is m. So a number divided by that same number is going to equal 1. That's the next golden rule. These are the two golden rules that we kind of, if you're in class, did on your warm-up, right? So if we can understand these two golden rules and we add the same thing, we do the same thing to both sides each time, we should be in pretty good shape, right? So let's talk about some different types of things. Maybe fractions, for example. Okay, it's time. Are you ready? Okay. Example 1. Okay, first example will be this. Negative 2 plus x equals 8. That can be the first example. So the question is, first of all, for some of you, you might want to draw a river. You cannot cross the river. You must do the same thing on the one side of the river as you do on the other side of the river. What would you like to do to make the x alone? Because we want, as a final answer, we want x equals, right? We want x equals to be our final answer. Tyler? Yeah, we add 2 to both sides. Now, what golden rule is this connecting to? What is the golden rule that I said here? Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. This is a golden rule, and this is why you can slash it out. You don't just slash it out because you feel like it. You slash it out because mathematically it equals 0, and you now have 0 plus x, and 0 plus x is just x, so x is equal to 10. Okay? Here's the deal, okay? You had, for example, okay? How can I say this? You had a seesaw, okay? And you had a skinny kid over here. And you had a skinny kid over here, okay? On the seesaw, right? Now, you had a skinny kid on both sides of the seesaw, and now you add a fat kid to this side of the seesaw, okay? It's all right. Now, what happens to the seesaw when you add that fat kid on the left side? Yes? It's going to go down. So what would you have to do to this side to make it balance? Add another fat kid. So there you go. You add another kid over here, and as long as they weigh the same amount, it stays perfectly balanced. Do you follow? That's what's happening here. You're adding 2 to both sides, keeping the scale equal. You know those scales in the law classes, right? In the courtroom? That's what you need to think of. Scales, Milbury, you could think of. Okay? Okay, that's example 1. It's pretty straightforward. Let's talk about example 2. Example 2. We're going to go a little bit faster because I know that you guys kind of know how to solve these already. Let's say negative 16 equals 8x, okay? That's the next example. And actually, just for fun, can we change it from 8x to 8a, okay? Just because I want to make a point here. It doesn't really matter whether it's an x or an a. It's all the same. So what's our goal? To get a alone, right? To get a equals a number. We want to know what a is, right? So what are we going to do to get a by itself? Right now, a is being multiplied or added or subtracted or divided. What's happening with the a right now, Tyler? Multiplying. Currently we have 8 times a. How can we get rid of a multiply by 8? What's the golden rule? Golden rule is if you multiplied by 8, how do you get rid of it? Divide by 8. Divide by 8, and now you'll have 8 divided by 8. You slash it out because now it's 1a. It just equals 1. If I divided by 8 on the right side, what do I have to do on the left side? Divide by 8. So I divide by 8 on the left side, and I now have negative 2 equals a. Everybody comfortable? Okay, let's do one more. Let's do one more. Now I'm going to add a couple of things here, okay? So I'm going to go to an intense problem, so to speak. I'm not going to really think it's that intense, but we'll talk about it. Okay, we got to end in about a minute, so let's try that, the video, because I don't want the video to be too long. Here's example 3, your last example, okay? And I'll make it, I don't know, I'm going to combine kind of a little bit of everything on this one, okay? How does that sound? So we'll make it equals, I don't know, 3 plus x over 2, and then I guess I'll make this 9, okay? At least I kept them all positive. Do you want me to change it to a negative, or are we cool with positive? We prefer the positive? Okay. Okay, now how do we start? This is now a two-step equation. There's two things that have to be done. There's a couple different ways you can do it. I've seen some people doing this by some crazy methods. There's okay ways to do it, but there's two real good ways of doing it. Can I have a volunteer that would tell me what they would like to do first? What would you like to do first? Can I hear from, who haven't I heard from? Someone else. Alright, so I polled the audience, and they said they wanted to get the x alone, and they want to get the 3 out of there and the 2 out of there. So for you guys at home, we want to get rid of the 3 or the 2, but the question is, what is better to get rid of first? Well, I think it's easier to get rid of the 3 first, and then get rid of the 2 afterwards. But some people hate fractions so much, so passionately, that they need to get rid of that 2 in the fraction immediately. So let me talk about your two options here, okay? First option will be in blue, second option will be in red. So we'll take this exact equation right here, and we will clone it, and we'll put it over here, okay? Now, option A is right here. If, like I said, you subtract the 3 to both sides. What's 3 minus 3? Well, it's 0. That's the only reason I'm slashing it out, because it equals 0. And now I have 6 equals, well, it's 0, but I don't have to write 0. X over 2. Not a terrible equation. How do I get rid of a divide by 2? What cancels division according to my rules, my golden rule? What cancels division? Yes, go ahead. Multiplication. Multiplication by what? In this case, Patul, what would you multiply by? Well, you want to get rid of division of 2, so you use multiplication of 2. So use multiplication of 2 on the left, you have to use multiplication of 2 on the right or front, so you now have 12 equals x and you are done. That's your answer, it worked. Now, some people say, I don't know, I'd rather get rid of the 2. Okay, if you want to get rid of the 2, you have to multiply everything by 2. That means everything on the left and everything on the right. Everything. So you multiply this by 2, you multiply this by 2, and you multiply this by 2. It will immediately get rid of the fraction, freeing you up from anxiety and stress. 18 equals, right, 2 times 9. 2 times 3 is 6, plus x. 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I have this. What's my next step? Yes. Subtract by 6. What is 18 minus 6? Oops, sorry, I shouldn't have done that. 18 minus 6 is 12, so what do we get for an answer? Same thing. It didn't matter how you did it, okay? It matters that you did it, and you used the rules of algebra. As long as you used my rules, you're okay. Now, some people might be confused by where there's 2 2's over here. There's 2 2's, get it? Over here on the right side, and there's only 1 on the left side. So what's happening is you're multiplying everything on the left and everything on the right. Because there's no on the left, more different things, more terms on the left. My mistake. On the right, you have to multiply by 2 times. And you're always multiplying everything on the left by 2. Right? Right. to stop this video, so we will take it from there. See you soon.